we think about scope creep as like a removalist and someone who's moving house, with the removalist being the provider and the person who's moving being the buyer. So think about this: the removalist arrives at the property at the agreed price and time. The boxes are filled with all the items, and there's a lamp at the end. Now, scope creep is adding an extra item, and the lamp in this case wasn't planned for, and to try and fit it into one of the boxes that are available. Now, this is simple, and in the case of the removalist, if they have space, putting it on the truck isn't an issue. It's only one more item, it's not an extra cost, and it's only a mild change, but it is scope creep. But in the second scenario, there's a full back room that was forgotten, has loads of furniture, but the box is already full and the van is packed and done. In this event, an extra service needs to be bought and purchased, and the owner's price goes up as a result, or the removalist's quote. The plan was to leave those items at the back, but that's changed. In both cases, they are scope creep. So one is trying to wedge items in a box that may or may not have some room, and the other is purchasing more boxes. And when we go through this, presentation, both are scope creep. And these are some of the ways that you know that you have some element of scope creep. Business requirements change midway through. Technology that is being used or utilized changes during the project. There are delays or interdependencies that aren't actually met, which means that there is a change in the scope. It's work overrunning past the time, and you need to, particularly in time and materials, is extending that work. When key staff change, those people that are responsible, and you need to actually add more people or add more time as a result. It's as a result of the work not being well understood, and we're going to cover this off later as well. This is the prime culprit for scope creep, where ambiguous requirements mean that the assumption from a buyer is always that things are included. The assumption from a seller is that things aren't included, but in either case, it's going to lead to scope creep. The handover process between either the contract being complete and then going into execution, or actually after being executed and then handed back as a project. And finally, an approach that is used by most companies, naturally, who want to grow their business, is land and expand. Those that are actually on location performing some work, see opportunities to do other work, is an element of scope creep. These two simple tricks can be used to practically eliminate scope creep from a contract perspective. Deployed has analyzed thousands and thousands of statements of work, and less than 10% have a not in scope section. This is the best way to eliminate scope creep. So if you take one thing away from today, it's that make sure that you encourage your stakeholders to put not in scope in, because it creates a line of thinking that makes sure that you expose any assumptions that might have led to scope creep later. You may have heard this story before, but one of our clients is a bank. They'd commissioned a consultancy to write a report on the state of the market, and the provider assumed that it was a UK market, but the bank assumed that it was a worldwide market, which led to a dispute. But unfortunately, it wasn't specified in the statement of work. And it's this kind of situation where a discussion around scope and exclusions and what would be out of scope would have actually helped. So by trying to work out what was in scope, but also out of scope, they would have figured out this misunderstanding and then actually solved that before the work started. Secondly, the second thing you can take away if you were time poor and had to drop off is that you should never, in any case, have an assumptions list in a statement of work. Assumptions are a sign that not enough planning and investigation has gone into a statement of work or a scope of work. Assumptions are the mother of a lot of problems, and are often used as a laundry list of things that frame the work to be performed. We assume the data is available. We assume that the teams will be free. We assume the laptops will be on time. These assumptions should be turned into customer or supplier dependencies, and therefore they can be mapped against the work. Assumptions that aren't mapped against deliverables or dependencies mean that you are exposing yourself to scope creep, because assumptions are either not met or assumptions are unclear. As an example, we've seen a statement of work that's probably 3 pages long in describing the scope of work, and it had an assumptions list of 2 pages long in 12 size bullet points. This is not a way of working. That's a way of getting work started early, and inevitably will lead to scope creep because it's a holding pattern for work to be done. And going back to, if you've been to any of our other webinars or had training, you would know the process that deployed follows is called our pre-signature process.